The council chamber on Theraxis Prime was filled with fear. 47 different alien species sat in the Great Hall, and every single one of them knew the truth. They were losing the war. Ambassador Krelther stood at the center of the room. His reptilian scales were dull with exhaustion. He had not slept in 3 days. None of them had. The holographic display behind him showed the galaxy in red and blue. Red was the enemy. Blue was them. There was too much red. We're losing the war? Krelther's voice echoed through the chamber. 12 years we have fought the Voidborn swarm, 12 years of death and destruction. We started with 55 worlds. Now we have 8. The gathered aliens murmured among themselves. Some had tentacles that writhed nervously. Others had multiple eyes that blinked in distress. The bird-like counselor Zethara folded her wings tight against her body. She had seen her homeworld consumed by the swarm just 2 months ago. Our fleets are broken, Krelther continued. Our soldiers are dying. Our people are fleeing. The swarm adapts to everything we throw at them. Energy weapons, kinetic missiles, plasma bombs. Nothing works for long. They learn. They change. They consume. A tall insectoid delegate clicked his mandibles. What do you propose? We have tried everything. Krelther's eyes swept across the room. Not everything. There is one member of this coalition who has not yet joined the fight. The room went silent. Everyone knew who he meant. The humans, Zethara said quietly. You want to ask the humans for help? Yes, a wave of protests erupted. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Coalition. They had only made contact with alien life 30 years ago. Their technology was primitive. Their ships were slow. They had only 5 colony worlds and a population of barely 20 billion. What could they possibly do? They are children playing with fire, shouted a 4-armed delegate. They still use chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. Exactly, Krelther said. They use weapons we abandoned thousands of years ago. Crude weapons. Unpredictable weapons. Maybe that is what we need. Zethara stood up, her feathers ruffled. I will not send a message begging for help from a species that barely knows how to leave their own solar system. It is humiliating. Then we die with our pride intact? Krelther said coldly. Is that what you want? The room fell silent again. Zethara's wings drooped. She knew he was right. Pride meant nothing if they were all dead. Send the message, she finally said. Ask the humans if they will help us. 3 days later, the message reached Earth. The human government debated for 6 hours. Some wanted to stay out of it. This was not their war. Their fleet was small. Their weapons were outdated compared to the aliens. Why should humans die for people they barely knew? But in the end, humanity made a choice. They would send help. Not an army. Not a fleet. Just one ship. The best ship they had, the Defiant Dawn, sat in the Luna shipyards orbiting Earth's moon. She was 300 meters long, built from titanium and steel. Her hull was scarred from previous battles defending human colonies. She was not pretty. She was not advanced. But she was tough, and her crew knew how to fight. Captain Hanjisu stood on the bridge, watching Earth grow smaller through the viewport. She was 36 years old, with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 15 years in the Earth Defense Force, fighting pirates and rebels. She had never expected to fight aliens. Course set for Theraxis Prime, said Commander Park Minho from his station. He was older than Jisu, with gray starting to show in his hair. He had a calm voice that never rose, even in battle. Transit time, 11 days. Jisu nodded. What's our crew count? 342, Park replied. Everyone volunteered. No one wanted to stay behind. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Yoon Hana was already working. She was 29, small and energetic, always moving. Her hands danced across control panels as she checked every system. The Defiant Dawn carried experimental weapons that the Coalition had never seen. Railguns that fired solid metal at incredible speeds. Nuclear missiles that could crack asteroids. EMP bombs that could shut down electronic systems. Simple weapons. Old weapons. Human weapons. How are we looking? Jasu's voice came through the ship's intercom. Everything is working, Hannah replied cheerfully. The reactor is running at 98%. Weapons are loaded. She's ready for a fight, Captain. Good. Keep her that way. In the medical bay, Dr. Choi Haijin was preparing for casualties. She was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life. The military had sent her because she knew about the swarm. She had studied them. She had seen what they did to living creatures. It still gave her nightmares. On the tactical deck, Lieutenant Kim Dae-yeon was running combat simulations. He was 28, the youngest officer on the bridge. He wanted to prove that humanity deserved to be in the coalition. He wanted to show the aliens that humans were more than just primitives playing with rockets. The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving Earth's solar system behind. The stars stretched into lines of light. The crew went about their duties, trying not to think about what waited for them. Jasu sat in her captain's chair. Reading reports about the swarm, they were a hive mind. Millions of creatures sharing one consciousness. Their ships were grown, not built, made of organic material that could heal itself. They consumed everything in their path, planets, ships, people, nothing was left behind. Park sat down beside her. Are you worried? He asked quietly. Jasu looked at him. Of course I'm worried. We're one ship going to fight an enemy that has destroyed 47 worlds. But someone has to go. Someone has to try. The coalition thinks we're too primitive to help. Then we'll prove them wrong. Park smiled slightly. Humanity's favorite hobby. The days passed slowly. The crew trained constantly. They ran drills and simulations. They practiced switching between different weapons quickly, never using the same tactic twice. They prepared for a battle they might not survive. On the 8th day, they received a priority message. The signal was broken and filled with static, but the words were clear enough. All coalition forces, this is General Valkorin at Kronos Belt. We are under heavy attack. Swarm forces are overwhelming our defenses. We need immediate reinforcement. If we fall, there is nothing between the swarm and the capital. Please respond. Please help us. Then the transmission cut out. Jasu stood up. Helm, change course. Set a direct route to Kronos Belt, maximum speed. That will push our engines past safe limits, Hannah warned. I don't care. Push them, yes, Captain. The Defiant Dawn changed course, racing toward the battle. They had 48 hours. 48 hours to reach Kronos Belt before it fell. 48 hours to prove that humanity could make a difference. Jasu looked at her crew. They were scared. She could see it in their faces. But they were ready. They were human. And humans did not run from a fight. All hands, battle stations, she said calmly. This is what we came for. Let's show them what Earth can do. The ship surged forward into the darkness, carrying the hopes of one small species toward a war that was consuming the galaxy. The Kronos Belt was chaos. Thousands of ships fought among massive asteroids that spun slowly through space. Blue energy bolts cut through the darkness. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. And everywhere, the swarm was winning. The Defiant Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the battle zone. Jasu stared at the viewport, trying to understand what she was seeing. The coalition fleet was enormous. She counted at least 2,000 ships, each one larger and more advanced than her own. They fired weapons that bent space and created miniature stars. They moved with grace and precision, but the swarm was bigger. Their bioships looked like giant insects crossed with deep-sea creatures. They had no metal, no technology as humans understood it. They were grown. Living things shaped into weapons. There were millions of them, maybe more. They moved like a swarm of locusts, covering everything. My God, Kim Dae-yeon whispered from the tactical station. How do we fight that? The same way we fight everything, Jasu said. One target at a time. A message came through on the coalition frequency. The face that appeared on screen was alien and angry. General Valcorin had 4 eyes and skin like rough stone. His expression made it clear what he thought of humans. "Human vessel, you are not authorized to be in this combat zone. Leave immediately." "General, we received your distress call," Jasoo said calmly. "We're here to help." "Help?" Valcorin's laugh was bitter. "You have 1 ship, 1. We have lost 600 ships in the last 3 hours. What can 1 primitive vessel possibly do? Let us show you. You will die in the first 5 minutes. I will not have human deaths on my conscience. Leave now." "That is an order." Jasoo cut the transmission. Park looked at her with raised eyebrows. "He ordered us to leave," Park said. "I heard him." Jasoo leaned forward. "Helm, take us to grid section 7-4. That's where their defensive line is weakest. Tactical, I want firing solutions on every swarm ship within range." "Captain," Park said quietly, "we're disobeying a direct order from a coalition general. The coalition isn't our military. He can't order us to do anything." Jasoo smiled grimly. "Besides, I didn't come all this way just to watch. Weapons, prepare to fire." The Defiant Dawn moved forward, threading between asteroids toward the weakest point in the coalition line. The crew watched their sensors as swarm ships detected them. Dozens of bioships changed course, coming straight at them. "Multiple contacts inbound," Kim reported. 40 ships, 60, 80, they're swarming us." "Good," Jasoo said. "Fire rail guns." Full spread. The human ship's weapons were nothing like coalition technology. Railguns used magnetic fields to launch solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. They were simple, primitive, but they hit like the fist of an angry god. The first volley caught the swarm ships by surprise. Metal slugs punched through organic hulls, tearing them apart. 10 bioships died in the first 3 seconds. Then 20 more. "They're adapting," Kim shouted. "The ones in the back are growing thicker armor." "Switch to nuclear missiles," Jasoo ordered. "Fire at will." Nuclear weapons had been banned in the coalition for 3,000 years. They were considered barbaric and wasteful. But humans had never stopped using them. The Defiant Dawn carried 40 warheads, each one capable of destroying a small city. 6 missiles launched, their chemical rockets pushing them forward. The swarm ships ignored them at first. They had dealt with energy weapons and plasma bombs. They thought they knew what to expect. The first nuclear explosion lit up space like a new sun. The bioships closest to the blast simply ceased to exist. The ones farther away were cooked by radiation and shredded by the shockwave. 30 ships died in an instant. The second missile hit. Then the third. The swarm formation broke apart in confusion. They had never encountered weapons like these before. In the medical bay, Dr. Choi was watching the battle on monitors. Her hands moved across her computer, analyzing the swarm's behavior. She had studied these creatures for years. She knew their patterns. And she was seeing something important. "Captain," her voice came through the intercom. "I need to show you something." "Kind of busy right now, Doctor," Jasoo replied as another wave of bioships approached. "This is important. The swarm adapts to any weapon we use. Energy weapons, kinetic strikes, everything. But I've been timing their adaptation. It takes 4.7 minutes. Every single time." Jasoo understood immediately. "So if we switch weapons every 3 minutes, they never have time to adapt. We stay ahead of them." "Tactical, you heard that." "Set a timer. Switch weapon types every 3 minutes. Rotate between railguns, missiles, and EMP bombs. Keep them guessing." The Defiant Dawn settled into a rhythm. 3 minutes of railgun fire. Switch. 3 minutes of nuclear. Strikes. Switch. 3 minutes of EMP pulses that. Scrambled the bioship's nervous systems. Switch. Repeat. The swarm couldn't adapt fast enough. Every time they grew armor to stop one weapon, humans switched to something else. It was simple. It was brutal. It was working. General Valcorin watched in disbelief from his flagship. This one primitive ship was holding a section of the line that 3 of his battlecruisers had failed to defend. He opened a channel. "Human Captain, this is General Valcorin. I was wrong? You are welcome in this battle. What do you need from us?" "Nothing, General. Just keep your ships away from our firing solution. We work better alone." The battle raged for 12 hours. The Defiant Dawn fought without stopping. The crew worked in shifts, grabbing sleep when they could. Engineer Hannah pushed the reactor to its limits, keeping power flowing to weapons and shields. Lieutenant Kim's fingers danced across his console, finding targets and firing with deadly precision. In the engine room, alarms were screaming. Hannah ignored them. She knew the limits of every system on the ship. She knew how far she could push before things broke. They weren't there yet. "Temperature is critical on reactor 2. Her assistant shouted, "I know. Vent coolant through secondary lines." Hannah's hands moved without thinking, adjusting flows and redirecting power. "We can give them 5 more hours before we have to pull back for repairs." On the bridge, Jisoo felt exhaustion pulling at her. She had been awake for 30 hours, but she couldn't rest. Not while her crew was fighting. Park brought her coffee. "You should sleep." "I can handle things for a few hours after the battle." "That might be too late." Jisoo looked at him. Park's face was tired but determined. They had served together for 10 years. He knew her better than anyone. 4 hours, she finally said. "Wake me if anything changes." She went to her quarters and collapsed on her bunk. Sleep took her immediately. When she woke, Park was shaking her shoulder. "Captain, you need to see this." Jisoo followed him to the bridge. Her first thought was that something had gone wrong, but the crew was smiling. On the view screen, the swarm was retreating. The bioships were pulling back, disappearing into the asteroid field. "We held them," Kim said with wonder in his voice. 12 hours. "We actually held them." The coalition fleet was battered but intact. General Valcorin's face appeared on screen again. This time there was no anger, only respect. "Captain Jisoo, on behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I apologize for my earlier words. You and your crew fought with courage and skill. You saved this battle. You saved us. We did our job, General. Nothing more. Your job involved holding off 10,000 enemy ships with a single vessel. That is beyond remarkable." He paused. "I have new information. The swarm attack here was a diversion. Our intelligence intercepted their communications. Their real target is Sanctum Prime, the Coalition capital. They will arrive in 72 hours. Jisoo felt cold. Sanctum Prime was where billions of aliens lived. If it fell, the Coalition would collapse. "How many ships do you have that can reach the capital in time?" she asked. "None. My fleet needs at least 4 days to repair and resupply. Then the Defiant Dawn will go alone." "Captain, they will have 10 times the number of ships they brought here. You cannot. Someone has to warn them. Someone has to buy time until your fleet arrives." Jisoo stood up straight. "We'll leave immediately." Park was already plotting the course. Hannah was rerouting power to the engines. The crew moved with purpose, preparing for the next battle. As the Defiant Dawn pulled away from Kronos Belt, the entire Coalition fleet turned on their running lights in salute. Thousands of ships, hundreds of species, all honoring the one small human vessel racing toward impossible odds. Jisoo watched them disappear behind her. Then she turned to face forward, toward Sanctum Prime and whatever waited there. "All hands," she said quietly. "Battle stations. Let's finish what we started." The Defiant Dawn raced through space at speeds that made the hull groan with stress. Engineer Hannah had pushed the reactor past every safety limit, giving them 1% extra of speed. 1% might mean the difference between arriving in time or finding only ruins. In the mess hall, Sergeant Lee Bora sat with her Marines. She was 31 years old, with scars on her arms from a dozen battles defending human colonies. Her squad of 40 Marines was small, but they were the best Earth had. They cleaned their weapons in silence, each one lost in their own thoughts. "Sarge," one of the younger Marines said. What's it like? Fighting the swarm up close? Lee looked at him. Private Kang Jiho was only 24, fresh from training. He had never seen real combat. She wanted to lie to him, to tell him it would be fine. But he deserved the truth. It's bad, she said simply. The swarm doesn't die easy. You can shoot 110 times and it keeps coming. They're fast. They're smart. And they want to get inside our ship, inside us? Once they infest a living thing, it's over. Jiho swallowed hard. Have you fought them before? No, but I've seen the videos. I've studied their tactics. She locked her rifle's charging mechanism with a solid click. Here's what you need to know. Stay with your squad. Watch your corners. And if you see one of those things, you shoot until it stops moving. Then you shoot it 10 more times. The Marine nodded slowly. Lee hoped he would survive what was coming on the bridge. Dr. Choi Hai-jin was sharing her research with Commander Park. Her computer screen showed biological diagrams of swarm organisms. Park tried to understand what he was looking at. They're remarkable, really, Choi said. Each bioship is actually millions of smaller organisms working together. Like how our bodies are made of cells, but on a much larger scale. They communicate through chemical signals and electrical pulses. And that helps us how? Park asked. Because if we can disrupt their communication, we can confuse them. At Kronos Belt, you noticed how they panicked when we kept switching weapons? That's because the hive mind couldn't process the chaos fast enough. So we need to be more chaotic. Exactly. The swarm excels at dealing with organized, predictable enemies. The coalition fights in formation with standardized tactics. Very logical. Very efficient. Very easy for the swarm to counter. Park smiled slightly. But humans don't fight like that. No, you don't. Human military doctrine seems to be organized chaos. You have plans, but you're willing to throw them away the moment things change. You improvise. You take risks. That confuses the swarm. I'll take that as a compliment. In the pilot's ready room, Ensign Kang Jiho was running flight simulations. Not the Marine Jiho, but another officer who shared the same family name. This Jiho was the ship's best pilot, capable of flying through asteroid fields at speeds that terrified his co-pilots. He had exceptional reflexes and a reputation for being reckless. Right now he was practicing something insane. The simulation showed him flying the Defiant Dawn through a formation of swarm bioships at full speed, weaving between them, using them as cover while the ship's guns fired in all directions. The simulation ended with his ship crashing into a bioship. Failure. He started it. Again, Captain Jisu entered the ready room. How many times have you crashed today? 47, Joe said without looking away from his screen. But I've succeeded 18 times. The odds are improving. What are you practicing? A maneuver for when we're outnumbered. If we can't outfight them, we need to outfly them. Use their own ships as obstacles. Jisu watched him fail again. Then succeed. Then fail. Think you can do it with the real ship? If you order me to, Captain. I'll do my best. That's all I can ask. The days blurred together. The crew worked in shifts, sleeping when they could, preparing for the battle they all knew was coming. The ship's AI calculated their arrival time constantly. 70 hours, 60 hours, 50. Jisu called a meeting of her senior officers. They gathered in the war room, a small space with a holographic display of Sanctum Prime floating in the center. Our orders are simple, Jisu said. Reach the capital, warn them of the attack, and hold the swarm off until the coalition fleet arrives. How long do we need to hold? Lieutenant Kim asked. General Valkorin estimates his fleet needs 96 hours to reach us after we arrive. So we need to survive for 4 days. The room went quiet. Everyone did the math. 1 ship, 4 days. 10,000 enemy vessels. That's impossible, someone said. Probably, Jisu agreed. Commander Park, what's our tactical situation? Park activated the hologram. Sanctum Prime has orbital defense platforms, but they're designed for piracy and small raids. Against a full swarm assault, they'll last maybe an hour. The planet has no military fleet in orbit. Everything was sent to the front lines, so it's just us. Just us? Park confirmed. Sergeant Lee spoke up. Captain, if the swarm gets past us and reaches the planet, what happens? They'll infest it. 7 billion people will die or become part of the swarm. The coalition government will evacuate, but they won't be able to save everyone. Then the swarm will move to the next system, and the next until there's nothing left. No pressure then, Lee said dryly. Jisoo looked at each of them. Her crew, her friends. They were scared. So was she. But fear could be useful if you didn't let it control you. I won't order anyone to stay, she said quietly. When we reach Sanctum Prime, anyone who wants to can take an escape pod down to the planet. No one will think less of you. This isn't our war. We're volunteers. You all have families back on Earth who want you to come home. With respect, Captain, Engineer Hannah said. Shut up. Jisoo blinked in surprise. Hannah stood up, her small frame radiating determination. We all volunteered knowing the risks. We came here because someone needed help. That hasn't changed. My family wants me to come home, yes. But they also raised me to help people who can't help themselves. So I'm staying. And I think I speak for everyone here when I say you're stuck with us. The other officers nodded. Kim saluted. Park smiled. Lee cracked her knuckles. Jiho just grinned. Jisoo felt something warm in her chest. Pride, maybe? Or love for these crazy people who chose to follow her into hell. All right then, she said. Let's make a plan. Dr. Choi, I want every piece of information you have on swarm behavior. Park, work with tactical on firing solutions. We need to maximize damage while conserving ammunition. Hannah, see if you can coax any more power out of the reactor. Lee, prepare your Marines for boarding actions. They will try to infest this ship. Giho, practice your impossible flying. We might need it. They dispersed to their stations. The ship hummed with activity as 342 humans prepared to face impossible odds, 30 hours before arrival. They received a message from Sanctum Prime. High Counselor Zethara's face appeared on screen. She looked old and tired, her feathers gray with stress. Captain Jisoo, we received your warning. We are evacuating all non-essential personnel from the capital. The Planetary Defense Force is preparing for assault. On behalf of the Coalition, I thank you for your courage. We're not there yet, Counselor. I know. But I wanted to tell you something. When we asked Earth for help, I did not believe humans could make a difference. You were too small, too primitive. I was wrong. What you did at Cronus Belt was remarkable. You saved thousands of lives. We were just doing our job. No, Captain. You were doing what the rest of us had forgotten how to do. You were refusing to accept defeat. Zethara's eyes were sad. I must be honest with you. When you arrive at Sanctum Prime, the swarm will already be here. We estimate their forces at 10,000 ships or more. You cannot defeat them. You will die. Probably. Then why come? Why not run? Save your crew. Save your ship. No one would blame you. Jisoo thought about that. Why was she doing this? She could turn the ship around. Go home, see her family again? Her crew would understand, but then she thought about the 7 billion people on Sanctum Prime. She thought about the coalition species who had fought for 12 years against an enemy that never stopped. She thought about the message Earth would send if they ran now. Because someone has to stand in the way, Jisoo said simply. Someone always has to stand in the way. That's what humans do? Zethara's eyes glistened with something that might have been tears. Then I will see you when you arrive, Captain. May your gods watch over you. The transmission ended. Jisoo sat alone on the bridge, watching the stars streak past. 6 hours until they reached Sanctum Prime. 6 hours until they faced the largest swarm fleet ever assembled. She picked up the shipwide intercom. All hands, this is the captain. In 6 hours we arrive at Sanctum Prime. The swarm will be waiting for us. I won't lie to you. The odds are bad. We're one ship against thousands. But we're also the only thing standing between the swarm and 7 billion innocent people. So we're going to do what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds. We're going to fight anyway. We're going to show the galaxy that Earth does not run. Earth does not surrender. And Earth does not abandon people who need help. Get some rest. Check your gear. Say your prayers if you have them. And when the time comes, let's show the swarm why you never, ever threaten a human's friends. She turned off the intercom. Park was standing behind her. Nice speech, he said. Think it worked? I think they would follow you into a black hole if you asked them to. Good. Sanctum Prime hung in space like a blue and green jewel. It was beautiful, home to 7 billion souls from a dozen different species. And surrounding it like a disease was the swarm. The Defiant Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately faced a nightmare. 10,000 bioships filled the orbital space around the planet, maybe more. The sensors couldn't count them all. They moved in patterns that made no sense, spiraling and weaving like a swarm of angry insects. Captain, Lieutenant Kim's voice was tight with stress. I'm reading over 12,000 enemy contacts. The planetary defense platforms are already gone. We're alone up here. Jisoo stared at the screen. She had known it would be bad, but seeing it was different. They were so terribly outnumbered. All hands, battle stations, she said calmly, as if they were just running another drill. Weapons free, engage at will. The ship's alarms blared. Red lights flooded the bridge. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing exactly what to do. In engineering, Hana looked at her power readings and made a decision. Divert all power from non-essential systems. Life support stays minimal. Gravity stays on. Everything else goes to weapons and shields. Chief, that's against every safety protocol, her assistant started. I know what it's against. Do it anyway? The Defiant Dawn surged forward into the swarm. The first wave of bioships turned toward them, their organic weapons charging with sickly green light. Evasive maneuvers, Jisoo ordered. Jiho, do your thing. Ensign Jiho's hands danced across his controls. The ship twisted and spun, diving through gaps in the swarm formation that looked too small to fit through. Bioships fired at them, missing by meters, some by centimeters. Railguns fire! Kim shouted. Metal slugs tore through space. Bioships exploded, their organic hulls no match for solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds. But for every ship that died, 2 more took its place. They're surrounding us, someone yelled. Switch to missiles, Jisoo ordered. Clear us a path. Nuclear explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. The swarm formation broke apart in confusion, giving them a moment to breathe. On the planet below, High Counselor Zathara watched from a command bunker. The human ship looked so small on her screen, surrounded by thousands of enemy vessels. She had sent evacuation orders. The spaceports were chaos as people fought to board ships, but there weren't enough ships. There would never be enough ships. How long can they last? She asked her military advisor. Minutes, Counselor. Maybe an hour if they're lucky. Zathara closed her eyes. She had asked these humans for help, and now they were going to die because of her. On the Defiant Dawn, the battle became a desperate dance. Jiho flew the ship through the swarm formation, using the bioships as obstacles and cover. Kim rotated through weapons every 3 minutes, never giving the swarm time to adapt. Hana kept the reactor running at 120%, ignoring warnings that screamed about imminent failure, but it wasn't enough. There were too many enemies. For every ship they destroyed, the swarm barely noticed. Captain, we've lost shield generator 3, Park reported. Hull breaches on decks 5 and 7. Damage control teams are responding. Jisoo checked her tactical display. They had been fighting for 20 minutes and had destroyed maybe 200 bioships. That left 11,800. The math was simple and brutal. Captain, Dr. Choi's voice came through on a private channel. I'm in the laboratory. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. The swarm is a hive mind. They communicate through a combination of electromagnetic pulses and organic chemicals. If we could broadcast something on those frequencies, something chaotic and disruptive, we might confuse them. What kind of broadcast? Human culture. Music, literature, art, random thoughts. Anything that shows individuality and chaos. The swarm mind can't process that kind of information. It might buy us time. Do it, Jasu ordered. I need access to the ship's main transmitter. And I need you to understand that this will tell the swarm everything about us. Our history, our culture, our weaknesses. If we survive this, they'll know exactly how to fight humans in the future. Jasu didn't hesitate. The future doesn't matter if we don't survive today. Do it. 10 minutes later, the defiant dawn began. Broadcasting on every frequency the swarm used to communicate. Rock music, classical symphonies, poetry, historical speeches, cat videos, cooking shows, arguments about sports, marriage proposals, jokes, anger, love, fear, hope, every messy, chaotic, contradictory aspect of human culture poured out into space. The effect was immediate. The swarm hesitated. Bioships stopped mid-attack, confused by the flood of individual thoughts and emotions. The hive mind tried to process what it was receiving and couldn't. How could one species have so many different opinions? Why would they argue with each other? What was a meme, and why was it funny? It's working, Kim shouted. They've stopped attacking. But the confusion only lasted 5 minutes. Then the swarm adapted. They simply filtered out the human broadcasts and resumed their assault, angrier than before. Nice try, Doctor, Jasu said. But we need something more. The ship shook as a bioship's weapon struck their hull. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The lights flickered. Hull breach on deck 3, Park called out. Swarm organisms are inside the ship. Sergeant Lee was already moving. She and her Marines raced through the corridors toward the breach. They found it quickly. A hole in the hull, and coming through it, swarm creatures. They looked like insects crossed with octopi, all teeth and claws and writhing tentacles. Open fire! Lee ordered, the corridor filled with gunfire. The swarm creatures screeched and died, but more kept coming. Lee's squad held their position, shooting anything that moved. But they were being pushed back. Seal the corridor. Lee shouted into her radio. Seal it now. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, trapping 5 swarm creatures inside with Lee's squad. She didn't stop shooting until all 5 were dead. Then she checked her Marines. 2 wounded, none dead. They had been lucky. On the bridge, Jasu was making calculations. They had been fighting for 1 hour. The swarm had barely noticed their efforts. The coalition fleet wouldn't arrive for 95 more hours. The math didn't work. There was no way to hold for that long, but she had made a promise. Someone had to stand in the way. Hana, she said into the intercom, how much power can you give me? Captain, I'm already past maximum. If I push any harder, the reactor will. I'm not asking you to push harder. I'm asking how much power you can give me if you turn the reactor into a bomb. Silence on the other end. Then, Captain, what are you planning? Answer the question. If I set the reactor to overload with a 20-minute countdown, I could give you enough power to destroy everything within 100,000 kilometers. But that includes us. Do it. Captain, that's an order, Chief. Set the countdown for 20 minutes. Then get everyone to the escape pods. Jasu turned to face her bridge crew. They were staring at her in shock. New plan, she said calmly. We turn the ship into the biggest bomb the swarm has ever seen. We fly directly into the center of their formation. When the reactor blows, it takes most of them with it. The planet is saved, the coalition fleet arrives and mops up the rest. And we die, Park said quietly. There are escape pods. We have 20 minutes. That's enough time to evacuate everyone. Not everyone, Park pointed out. Someone has to pilot the ship. Someone has to stay on the bridge to make sure we reach the right position before the reactor blows. Jasu met his eyes. I know. Kim stood up. Captain, No, you're all getting off this ship. That's an order. I'm the captain. This is my responsibility. With respect, Captain, Ensign Jiho said from the pilot's seat. I'm the best pilot on this ship. You couldn't fly this course if you tried. If someone has to stay, it should be me. Jiho, I'm not arguing, Captain. This is my call. I'm staying. Before Jisoo could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Hana's voice came through the intercom, panicked. Captain, I've initiated the countdown, but there's a problem. The manual override in engineering is damaged. Someone has to stay here to keep the reactor on course for overload. If it's not monitored, it could explode early or not at all. Jisoo felt cold. The plan required 2 people to die, the pilot and the engineer. Delay that order, she said quickly. I'm coming down there. I'll handle the reactor. No, you won't. Hannah's voice was calm now, almost cheerful. Captain, you're needed on the bridge. You're needed to lead the evacuation and make sure everyone gets off safely. This is my engineering section, my reactor, my responsibility. Tell my parents I love them. Tell them I was brave. Now get everyone off my ship before I overload this thing early just to spite you. The intercom cut off. Jisoo tried to reconnect, but Hana had locked her out of the engineering controls. Damn it! Jisoo slammed her fist on the console. Then she took a breath and forced herself to be calm. Time was running out. All hands abandoned ship. Get to the escape pods. Now, that's an order. The crew moved quickly. 340 people raced through the corridors toward the escape pods. Park tried to stay on the bridge, but Jisoo physically pushed him toward the exit. Go, she said. Get everyone to safety. That's your job now, Commander? Park looked at her with anguish in his eyes. Then he saluted and left. On the bridge, only Jisoo and Jiho remained. The explosion lit up space like a second sun. From the planet below, 7 billion people watched as the Defiant Dawn died, taking most of the swarm fleet with it. The shockwave spread outward, destroying bioships by the hundreds. When the light finally faded, only scattered remnants of the swarm remained. Confused and leaderless High Counselor Zethara stood in her command bunker, staring at the screen with tears running down her face. The human ship was gone. That brave crew who had traveled across the galaxy to help people they barely knew, gone. Send all available planetary defense fighters, she said quietly. Destroy what's left of the swarm before they can regroup. Coalition fighters launched from the planet's surface, finishing what the Defiant Dawn had started. Within 2 hours, the orbital space above Sanctum Prime was clear. The battle was over. The planet was saved, but the cost felt too high. On the planet's surface, the escape pods had landed safely. 340 humans sat in emergency shelters, dealing with the shock of survival and loss. Commander Park held a list of names in shaking hands. 3 people had chosen to stay on the ship. Captain Han Jisoo, Ensign Kong Jiho, Chief Engineer, Yoon Hana, 3 people who gave their lives so everyone else could live. Dr. Choi Hae-jin sat in a corner, quietly crying. She had worked with Hana for 2 years. They had been friends. Sergeant Lee stood by the shelter entrance, her face hard and expressionless. But her hands were clenched into fists, so tight her knuckles were white. Lieutenant Kim stared at nothing, his mind refusing to accept what had happened. A coalition shuttle arrived to take the survivors to a proper facility. As the humans boarded, something unexpected happened. The aliens working at the spaceport stopped what they were doing. Then, one by one, they stood at attention. Hundreds of alien beings from dozens of species, standing in silence to honor the human crew. Zethara herself came to meet them. She looked at Park with eyes full of grief and gratitude. "Commander Park," she said, "your captain and her crew saved 7 billion lives today. We will never forget what they did, never." Park wanted to say something meaningful, something that would honor his captain and friends, but his throat was tight and no words would come. He just nodded. The humans were given quarters in the planetary capital. They were offered medical care, counseling, anything they needed. But mostly they just wanted to be left alone with their grief. 3 days later, General Valkorn's fleet arrived at Sanctum Prime. His ships filled the orbital space where the swarm had been. When he learned what had happened, he requested a meeting with the human survivors. They gathered in a conference room. Valkoran entered with his senior officers. The general who had once dismissed humans as primitives now stood before them with his head bowed in respect. I have no words adequate to express my gratitude, he said. Captain Jisoo and her crew did something I thought was impossible. They held off a force 1,000 times larger than themselves. They saved this world. They saved the Coalition. They died, Park said flatly. They're gone. Yes, and because they died, billions will live. Their sacrifice will echo through history. Valkoran looked at each of them. The Coalition Council has voted. We are building a memorial station at Sanctum Prime. It will be called Dawn's Light in honor of your ship. And we are establishing a new medal, the highest honor we can bestow. The Order of the Defiant. Captain Jisoo, Ensign Jiho, and Chief Hannah will be the first recipients. They're dead, Park repeated. Medals don't bring them back. No, they don't. But they ensure that every species in the galaxy will know what these 3 humans did. They will never be forgotten. Park finally looked up at the general. What about the war? Did their sacrifice actually change anything? Valkoran nodded slowly. Come, let me show you. He led them to the command center, where a holographic map of the galaxy floated in the air. The red zones showing swarm territory were smaller than before. New blue zones were appearing as Coalition forces retook lost ground. The destruction of the hive vessel at Sanctum Prime crippled the swarm's coordination, Valkoran explained. They're scattered now, fighting without direction. We've reclaimed 14 systems in the last 3 days. The momentum has shifted. You're winning, Dr. Choi said quietly. We are. And it's because of what your crew showed us. Valkoran touched the holographic display. For 12 years, we fought the swarm with advanced weapons and logical tactics. Nothing worked. The humans arrived with primitive weapons and crazy tactics. And you won? You taught us that sometimes the answer isn't better technology. It's better spirit. Refusing to give up even when all logic says you should. He looked at the surviving crew. Your government has been contacted. Earth is sending ships. Real military support. 200 vessels with trained crews. They'll arrive within the month. Park felt something stir in his chest. Not quite hope, but close. 200 ships? Earth wants to honor its fallen by finishing what they started, Valkoran said. And the rest of the Coalition has been inspired. Every member species is sending reinforcements. The tide is turning, Commander. We're winning the war. 2 weeks after the battle, a ceremony was held on Sanctum Prime. Millions attended in person. Billions watched on broadcasts throughout the galaxy. A massive memorial was unveiled, showing 3 humans standing together. Looking up at the stars, the names were inscribed in every Coalition language. Captain Han Jisoo, Ensign Kong Jiho, Chief Engineer Yun Hana, they stood in the way. They saved us all. Park stood at the memorial with his crew. Dignitaries from 47 worlds gave speeches about courage and sacrifice. But the words washed over him. He just stared at the carved faces of his friends and felt empty. After the ceremony, Dr. Choi approached him. I've been analyzing the data from the battle, she said. The broadcast I made, the one with human culture? It actually worked better than we thought. The swarm hive mind is still trying to process what it received. Every time they encounter something human now, they hesitate. Just for a moment, but it's there, so we found their weakness. We found a weakness. Human unpredictability. Human chaos. Human refusal to follow the rules. She smiled sadly. Jisoo would have loved that. She never did like following the rules. Park almost smiled. Almost 6 months passed. The war continued, but everything had changed. Earth's fleet arrived at Sanctum Prime, 200 ships carrying humanity's best warriors. They came not as reluctant volunteers, but as crusaders, determined to finish what the Defiant Dawn had started. Admiral Shin Tae-jin, a grizzled veteran who had fought in every human conflict for 30 years, took command of the combined human fleet. His flagship was the Defiant Dawn II, built to honor the original. On its hull was painted the image of 3 humans standing defiant against the stars. The Coalition forces, inspired by human courage, fought with renewed determination. Species that had been enemies before the war now fought side by side. The swarm was being pushed back, system by system, world by world. Park was given command of his own ship. The rising storm, his crew was mixed, humans and aliens working together. He applied the lessons he had learned from Jisu. Be unpredictable. Switch tactics constantly. Never give the enemy time to adapt. And most importantly, never give up. Lieutenant Kim commanded the Thundering Sky. Dr. Choi joined the Coalition Science Division, developing new anti-swarm weapons based on human biology. Sergeant Lee led a joint species marine force that became legendary for their boarding actions. Everywhere, the survivors of the Defiant Dawn spread the lessons their captain had taught them. 1 year after the Battle of Sanctum Prime, Park returned to the memorial. He came alone in the early morning before the crowds arrived. He stood before the statue of Jisu and finally let himself feel everything he had been holding back. "We're winning, Captain," he said quietly. "The Coalition has reclaimed 42 systems. The swarm is in retreat. Earth has sent 500 more ships. We have volunteers from every species in the galaxy. They all want to serve on human vessels because we fight like you taught us to, crazy, unpredictable, never giving up." He touched the carved stone of her face. "I miss you. All of you. Every single day. But I understand now why you did it. Why you stayed. Because someone had to stand in the way. And you made sure the rest of us could keep fighting." A voice spoke behind him. "She would be proud of you." Park turned to find High Counselor Zethara. She walked slowly to the memorial, her feathers now more gray than before. She placed a flowering branch at the base of the statue. "I come here every week," she said, "to remind myself what real courage looks like. Do you know what's happening because of them? We're winning the war. More than that. The Coalition is unified for the first time in its history. Species that wouldn't share the same room before are now sharing ships. Working together. Fighting together. Your captain didn't just save Sanctum Prime. She saved the entire Coalition. She'd say she was just doing her job." "I know. That's what made her remarkable." Zethara looked at Park. "Will you tell me about her? The real her, not the legend?" So Park did. He told stories about Jisu's terrible sense of humor. How she would make puns during combat briefings. How she loved coffee so much she kept an emergency supply hidden in her quarters. How she once won a card game against 3 professional gamblers using nothing but confidence and luck.